What is a weird NSFW historical fact? Antony van Leeuwenhoek, known as the father of microbiology, was the first to examine semen under a microscope immediately after ejaculating in his wife. Would have been easier on a slide. Probably hard to get the microscope in there. Hey, I got an idea, Leowie, don't you dare write a science journal about this. You're never gonna make it. A ton of ancient Roman graffiti still exists, and it's basically all dick jokes, crude humor, bragging about sex, etc. The OG Xbox Live. From Pompeii, weep, you girls. My penis has given you up. Now it penetrates men's behinds. Goodbye, wondrous femininity. Until 1977, Blue Cross and Blue Shield covered elective clitorectomies of children. I still don't understand why my insurance company charged me $500 for a vasectomy when our daughter's birth was $10,000 plus. You'd think they'd pay me $500 for a vasectomy. I didn't expect to see my insurance company in this thread. It's through work and I'm poor, okay? The Maya people had complex comics similar to our own today. There is comic of a rabbit stealing a man's clothes, and in translation his speech bubble says "smell your sweat, wizard penis." There's also a museum with a large collection of ceramics that are adorned with comically exaggerated reproductive features, my favorite being a cup with a built-in straw shaped like a dick. Sadly they will probably never meet the public. I'm going to use the insult wizard penis now. I feel like "smell your sweat, wizard penis" could be translated more liberally. In World War I, British spies would use semen as invisible ink for their letters. Actually very effective, as it would show up in a black light, but not in any of the normal ways to detect invisible ink, such as heat. French President Félix Faure died while getting a blowjob. Don't know if he finished though. Gives new meaning to a happy ending. Safe to say she sucked the life out of him. Edit, thanks for the awards, and it's the first time I got more than one upvotes. Roman brothels had pictures of the prostitutes' specialties above the door to their room. Some also had tokens depicting a sex act on one side and a number on the other, presumably for payment or getting around language difficulties. Now that's what I call Roman efficiency. Josephine Bonaparte was well known for her acts in the sack. Apparently she had amassed a technique of doing something called zigzagging in bed. What that is. Hold up. Remember Napoleon in the Ziggy Pig restaurant in Bill and Ted's Adventure? Maybe that move when they're riding you and start twerking? What it's actually called. Up until the industrial era it would have been surprisingly commonplace to find dead, unwanted, and abandoned babies just anywhere and everywhere. Powdered wigs became a fashion out of a need to cover up the patchy, inflamed baldness caused by syphilis. The ancient Egyptians had a yearly ceremony that involved men, mostly importantly the pharaoh himself, jerking off into the Nile, as they believed it to have been created by a god in the same manner. Some of the oldest discovered artifacts made by Homo sapiens are dildos carved from mammoth tusk ivory. A number of US service members tasked with backing up anti-Taliban-aligned militants in Afghanistan were dishonorably discharged when they tried to bring attention to the blatant use of child sex slaves by these allied warlords. Mozart composed a song called "Lick My Ass," translated. Unit 731. I'm not going to give details. Look it up at your own risk, it's way too fucked up. The man who invented one of the first autopilot systems for aircraft made it to be able to have sex with a married woman while they flew. Edit, they ended up crashing into a pond when someone accidentally bumped the off switch during the act. Both survived, but had some awkward explanations to make. Anne Frank wrote about going through puberty in her diary, including passages about exploring her body and feelings of attraction to both male and female friends. Her father left these more private thoughts out of the published version of her diary. Someone, I can't remember if he was a NASA employee or a grad student or something, stole a bunch of moon rocks brought back during the Apollo program, laid them out on a bed and had sex with his girlfriend on top of them. Edit, debunked. Empress Wu Zetian of China would assert her authority over other nobles by forcing them to perform oral sex on her. Edit, spelling. My 7th grade teacher left the complete Anne Frank diary with these passages on the class communal bookshelf. Me and 2 buddies had detention for a month, eventually found it and were kinda curious why this version looked different to the one we were issued. Anne Frank was a real ass woman. All 3 of us grew up that month, reading through a young woman's account of growing up amidst all that was happening around her. Perspective is insane. Unit 731 was the Japanese bio/chem unit, right? Earliest reference to a condom was in 3000 BC. It was made of a sheep's bladder. Other historical references to condoms include the Egyptian and Roman empires. A condom found in Sweden was dated to about 1640. It was made of pig intestines and was reusable. Came with instructions written in Latin. A 20-inch dildo was found in an old latrine in Poland, dating to the 1800s. It was made of leather, wood and bristles. Bristles? You sure it wasn't an oiled brush? It was made of a sheep's bladder. Unfortunately, this excuse didn't work when I was caught balls deep in a sheep and told them I was just testing the condom out before opening the packet. Dodgy horse salesmen used to put either ginger or live eels up horses' asses to make them seem more lively. It was the equivalent of putting sawdust in the gearbox of an old car. Ginger, I knew, but live eels? Wouldn't they bite like crazy? Now I'll admit that I'm no horse expert, but I would guess that if you see a horse bleeding profusely from their anus you probably shouldn't buy it. Tell me more about the sawdust in the gearbox. Picasso's buddy wrote a poem about his wiener. What a friendship, writing poetry about your buddy's hock. Roommates? A common folk magic practice to bewitch a man in early modern Europe, circa 1400s-1600s, involved a woman making bread or pastry dough, kneading it, and pressing it against her naked vulva before baking it and giving it to the target in question. It allegedly made the woman irresistible to the man. Here in Southeast Asia there's something similar. I'm not sure about the specifics, but the woman squats over a pot of cooking rice and the condensed water over the vagina from the steaming rice drips back into the rice. Some chants are said and voila nasi kang kang, said to be a potent potion for stealing another woman's husband. Not an expert on this, but this nasi kang kang is always brought up when you hear of a married man having an affair where I'm from. Muff pastry. In the 15th century, an erotic novel called The Tale of Two Lovers was written by a man named Aeneas Sylvius Piccolomini, who later became Pope Pius II. Now I kinda want to read the papal porno. JFK was a massive sex addict and he said at one point he would get migraines without sex. I forgot where he said that, but I learned in a few years ago and I still find it funny. His biggest headache was his last. His Secret Service detail used to refer to him as Jack the Zipper. Saint Bernard got his sainthood for having a dream about the Virgin Mary lactating into his mouth. Or in other words, Saint Bernard got his sainthood for a wet dream. A wet dream about his breastfeeding kink, no less. I saw in his hand a long spear of gold, and at the point there seemed to be a little fire. He appeared to me to be thrusting it at times into my heart, and to pierce my very entrails. When he drew it out, he seemed to draw them out also, and to leave me all on fire with a great love of God. The pain was so great, that it made me moan, and yet so surpassing was the sweetness of this excessive pain, that I could not wish to be rid of it. Saint Teresa of Avila. Cleopatra was the product of 4 consecutive generations of brother-sister marriages. The Ptolemies were adamant about keeping the royal bloodline pure, so they didn't allow it to fork. And you thought the Targaryens and Lannisters were bad. The only reason they weren't all terribly disfigured was the assortment of mothers. They were all half-siblings, which isn't going to cause quite as many issues. Nothing compared to the McPoyles. In medieval times, to torture the people that broke the law, they would rope them in place over a triangular spike and then tie some weights to them. In a course of about 5 hours their asshole would be stretched probably 3 inches and they would be in more pain than pain. Adult raccoons can fit through an opening as small as 3 inches. Street names in medieval England were often descriptive of what business or services could be found on that street. One guess what kind of business you'd find on Grobekend Lane. One guess what kind of business you'd find on Grobekend Lane. Florists? I hope this practice didn't extend to Scotland, because it makes me really worried about Cockburn Street in Edinburgh. Subscribe for more hot Reddit takes in your inbox, guaranteed.